What's going on, everybody? It's Craig from MobileTechTalk, and today we are just doing a pre-review, if you like, my first impressions on the first 5 things that I can think about to talk to you that I've come across in almost 2 weeks of using the Huawei P30 Pro. Thanks again to Huawei for taking us out to Paris for the launch event. Not only was it great to be able to get hands-on with this device really early, but to be able to use these cameras out and about on the Parisian streets was just amazing. So without further ado, let's get into our pre-review, the top 5 things, or the 5 things to note on the Huawei P30 Pro. Right, so let's get into number 1, and the first thing to talk to you about is just how amazingly gorgeous this device is. So there's a number of different colors that the Huawei P30 Pro comes in. This is the breathing crystal. There is also a absolutely fire, or lit if you're that way inclined, amber sunrise color, which is sort of a burnt red, sort of deep orange color, which I really want to get hold of. Huawei Mobile, if you're listening, hook me up, because that color for me is perfect. But this breathing crystal is one of the more interesting ones. You can see the gradient. I'm just checking the view screen here that you can see it. You've got sort of a white crystally pearlescent color, and then moving into pinks and blues and purples. So it's not just the colors that make it amazing though. So you've also got the curvature of the screen. I've got a screen protector on here, which is a good job because I've already dropped it. But it's just the curved chamfered edges of the design on this make it really easy to hold. It's not a small device, it's quite a tall device, but the aspect ratio means and the design of it means that it's quite easy to kind of put your hands around and claw it and really get to grips with it. But yeah, those colors are just amazing. It's a very nice design. There aren't a lot of Android devices out there that are actually doing anything different with their design. Huawei arguably aren't anymore, because they've been launching these sort of Aurora style twilight colors that kind of blend with their multiple layers of glass to kind of give you that light refraction that they've got going on here. They've been doing it for a few generations now, but I still think it's gorgeous, and as long as they keep bringing new colors to the table and perhaps kind of tinkering a little bit with it, then it's fine by me. So number 1 is the design of the Huawei P30 Pro. So staying on the rear for number 2, the second thing I need to talk about are these cameras. So you can probably see here there's quite a tall camera strip, and there's a little bit off to the side here, which is normally where the flash is. There's a time of flight sensor there, so let's start with that. So that gives the camera and the sensor more data to kind of deal with in terms of the depth. So as you're looking to take a portrait shot, for instance, what it will do is you'll start to see slow gradients of blur rather than the sort of really harsh immediate blur and then no change as you go further into the background. So the time of flight uses sort of distance to kind of gauge where the blur in effect should kind of be delivered. So that's really helped in the shots I've taken so far. Yeah, up top you've got a 20 megapixel super wide angle lens, and you've got a 40 megapixel wide lens, and then you've got an 8 megapixel sort of zoom lens, and this kind of can give you, if I can get my words out, this can give you a 5x optical zoom, but it doesn't stop there. And 5x is great, and you can kind of get lossless zoom because it's optical, almost lossless, but it's lossless to my eyes. You can get an almost lossless 10x zoom as well using this camera. So when you're zooming in, you can see, I've seen details that I haven't even noticed before with the naked eye at 10x. But it's got another trick up its sleeve. It's a little bit of a gimmick. It's very difficult to handhold and take these sort of shots, but you can use a hybrid of the technologies, sort of digital and optical zooms. Oh, it's gone a bit gloomy here. To actually get a 50x, 50 times zoom onto the subject that you're trying to access. So the way in which Huawei have kind of shown this is when we went out to Paris, they had a platform, they had the Eiffel Tower in the distance, and then they got you to take a wide shot, a 1x shot, a 5x shot, a 10x shot. Fine, all looked really nice. The wide X shot on this, so the super wide's brilliant as well. But when you kind of zoomed in with the 50x, you could see the individual names written on the side of the Eiffel Tower, which normally that's reserved for people using telescopes to actually get to that sort of level and see that detail. Well, you don't need to now. You've got a 50x zoom here. But what I alluded to before, it is difficult to kind of hold. So one tiny little movement on your device, and I'm kind of exaggerating the movement you need to kind of throw it off, and your subject's over here. So you've got to be really careful, and it's more for sort of tripod usage. But the 10x zoom alone is kind of worth the price of admission, so to speak. So little bit of a conversation around this selfie camera. So I have noticed that they've got dynamic AI or AI HDR. So the idea is that it's going to give more sort of high dynamic range on this 32 megapixel selfie camera that it's got on the front. I haven't found that. I've found that other than the subject that it's actually capturing on the selfie camera, everything else is kind of washed out. So the background here would be completely washed out. You probably wouldn't be able to see the bricks as well. The clouds and the sky are almost white if it's sort of normal light conditions. And also the sort of bokeh effect and the edge detection that it looks to give you around the portraits. I've noticed lots of bits of my face and hat and jacket and things like that have been completely blurred out. I think the S10 Plus, from what I've seen, does a better job. Still, maybe that'll be updated in terms of software, but 32 megapixels still gives you a very good detail. So you can always crop in and kind of still make good photos out of that. So number 2 is the camera package. For the most part, brilliant. A few things to kind of tweak. So for number 3, we're going to switch around to the front and we're going to look at that fingerprint scanner. The fingerprint scanner here is the same sort of technology that was debuted in the Huawei Mate 20 Pro, which was my device really that I was using before this. Same technology, but they've moved the fingerprint sensor a little bit further down, still under the screen, but a little bit further down. So before you were kind of looking here to kind of put your finger or your thumb or whichever part of your hand you want to kind of use as on the fingerprint scanner, but now it's right to the bottom, which when you look at kind of how your hand kind of rests, that probably makes more sense. And I've noticed that I've had much more success with this fingerprint scanner, whereas the Mate 20 Pro was sometimes a little bit hit and miss. It's still very fast. I mean, oh, there you go. It's still very fast. I actually pressed the wrong part of my thumb on that. I've only just kind of done this. I haven't really added any more fingers to this. So, but 99.9% of the time, it's fast enough. It's not as fast as other fingerprint scanner technologies out there, but it's fast enough. And 99.9% of the time, it delivers a first time click through. So that's absolutely fine. Where I have had some issues though, is when I've been out in the cold or when I've had a little bit of moisture on my hands. And then it does seem to kind of maybe 1 every 5 times hiccup. Maybe that can be tweaked in software, although I would have thought it was more of a hardware issue there. But again, as long as your hands are dry and you're not too cold, like I am at the moment, then it will work absolutely fine. And the idea of having it under the screen is still brilliant. A lot of smartphones are going to start bringing this in. I know that we're looking at different ways within the smartphone design to kind of make sure that we've got enough packed into the devices, which means certain things like the notch and things like that are going. And I think the fingerprint scanner under the screen is just another sort of evolution that every smartphone will end up having. And on the Huawei P30 Pro, it works almost flawlessly. So for number 4, we're talking about battery life, and this is probably the number 1 feature on any device for me. Up until a couple of generations ago, I struggled to get through an entire day with an Android smartphone. My use case is sort of idle, hammer, idle, hammer it. And smartphones seem to have a bit of an issue with that. So from the Mate 20 Pro onwards, and the P30 Pro has kind of managed this as well, I can get 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours of screen on time. And that screen on time is very sort of deep, dedicated screen on time. And then it's idle, and I can get almost 24 hours of idle as well. So it will go a good 4 or 5 hours without me doing anything other than just checking my notifications, and then bang, I'll have to use the screen. And this is just a powerhouse. Some of that is going to be down to the fact that this is a 1080p screen. It's not a 1440 or 4K screen. For me, that's fine because these devices are small enough for 1080p to be still incredibly crispy, and this device is. But others will notice that it's a drop from the 1440p that was on the Mate 20 Pro and other high-end flagships. I don't see that as an issue. I would rather have a 1080p and an absolute ball of battery, which is what the Huawei P30 Pro has. Okay, so we're up to number 5, and the last one is something that still surprises me a little bit. So you will notice if you're looking at the top here, and I'll probably zoom in, or I'll give you another video on this, or just check some of the renders on MobileTechTalk or Instagram. So there is no speaker grill, there is no earpiece. So when you put it up and you want to speak to people, as some people still do, believe it or not, smartphones still are good for voice calls. There's no earpiece for you to be able to kind of actually hear what's going on the other side. So how do you actually get the audio out? And it's almost like bone conduction. So it's vibrating the screen and the layers under the screen to deliver audio to your ear. So I'll try and put a little bit of a video, or at least a screen capture or something on the screen now. What actually happens is when you're making a phone call, you get a nice little pop-up on the top of the screen telling you where to put your ear. So I kind of looked at this and thought this was going to be a bit gimmicky, because I had used the sort of G8 interpretation, albeit briefly and probably pre-production, and I wasn't impressed. And call quality to me has dipped a little bit on Android devices over the last couple of years, as people probably use that feature set a little bit less. But this is just amazing. I put it to my ear, expecting not to be able to hear anything, or at least to hear it kind of crackle or break up. And it was perfect. It was better than the Mate 20 Pro with an earpiece. It's as good as an Android device I've used in a while. And just the ability to be able to get that sort of crisp sound from something that isn't an earpiece or isn't a speaker grill, to me is just amazing. It may just be me, but I think that's amazing. It only works in voice calls. It can't be used as sort of a surround sound or a stereo sound for media consumption. You have to rely on the bottom firing speaker for that. But the ability to be able to take a voice call, as some people still do, quite regularly actually, especially last week, and be able to hear it clearly without an earpiece, to me, makes it onto the top 5 list. So there you have it, guys. This was just a quick video of the top 5 things, or the 5 things of note that I've kind of come across in my almost 2 weeks of testing this device. We're probably about a week away from delivering our full verdict in a full review over at MobileTechTalk. But Dom, Mobile Dom on Twitter, who is also on the site, is going to deliver a real-world camera comparison. He's going to look at the sort of Mate 20, maybe the P30 Pro, and how that sort of generation gap has kind of led to the camera improvements they've got in the P30 Pro, whereas I'm going to do the more sort of regular review. Let's have a look at this as an overall smartphone. So the P series, for those of you that don't know, focuses on photography. If there is a sort of balance to be had between performance and photography, the P series comes out on top in terms of photography, and will always. That's what their focus is. Whereas the Mate series is more about performance. Pack as much power into that device as possible, and everything else is kind of not an afterthought, but it's performance led, and the P series is photography led. So it'd be interesting to see what Dom kind of sees in terms of the comparison with the P30 Pro. But I can tell you, because this has the same chipset of the Mate 20 Pro, which I've been using as a daily device, performance is identical. I've had no issues at all. In fact, if anything, it's probably been a little bit snappier, because there's been another sort of 6-8 months of refining of the software, EMUI 9.1 on this as well. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick first impressions, I suppose, or first couple of weeks of using this device, and the 5 things that I thought I should tell you guys before a full review. That full review is about a week away, as I said, so keep it locked on Mobile Tech Talk. Let us know in the comments if you like this sort of format, or you want something a little bit longer or shorter, and we'll see what we can do. And like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.